Gear up for Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. It's your final word on sports all across the state. Here's your host, Phil Kornblum.
As I rode through that parade route and looked at the people cheering, what I saw were in the crowd men and women, young and old, all different socioeconomic statuses, black and white, all different ethnicities, all joined together in celebrating their team.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, and welcome into another year of SEC football media days. We are coming to you from Birmingham, Hoover, Alabama, site once again of SEC media days. A hot day here in the Birmingham area. Temperatures in the upper 90s. I think part of that's because of all the hot air that blew in at the hotel, the Winfrey Hotel, where we have media days every year. Oh, yeah. Only 3 coaches today. That was Greg Sankey, you heard, the commissioner of the SEC. And he had a lot of nice things to say about South Carolina. You heard him referencing the parade for the Women's National Championship, but he was tying that in to the 85th anniversary this year coming for the SEC and how the SEC has evolved over the decades, as he was pointing out, inclusion, welcoming all races, women involvement, and things of that nature. And so he used the parade in Columbia that he rode in as an example of the people who came out to support the USC women are the same people, he says, that are involved in every area of the SEC. As far as the football teams go, we had Arkansas, we had LSU, and we had Tennessee. And today we'll hear from Bielema at Arkansas. We'll hear from Butch Jones at Tennessee, since they both play South Carolina this year. Ed Orgeron, I tell you what, he talks like he's just got a mouthful of marbles or something. He's just got such a deep, yeah, I'm telling you, it's just, but you know, it's perfect for down there where he is now. But he feels like he learned a lot when he was the head coach at Ole Miss, made his mistakes there, and feels like he's a much better coach going into this season at LSU with the running back Geis and with the defensive end, one-time Gamecock commitment Arden Key, who he says is going to be fine, took the spring off, had some shoulder work done, should be fine for this season. He had 12 sacks last year, calls him one of the best defensive players in the SEC. Speaking of one-time Gamecock hopefuls who went elsewhere and has done well, Kendall Vickers was here today from Tennessee. Now, those of you who follow recruiting closely will recall our coverage of Kendall Vickers a few years ago coming out of Havelock, North Carolina. He desperately wanted to go to South Carolina. That was his number one school, and for whatever reason, the Gamecocks wouldn't take him. Maybe it'd been a little bit of academics, whatever the case may be. They didn't wait on him. He got his academics in order. He goes to Tennessee. He's now a starting defensive end at Tennessee, and was one of the representatives of the Vols here today. I think South Carolina could have imagined if Arden Key had stuck to his commitment pro and Kendall Vickers had gone on to South Carolina, if they had taken him, they might not be having all these question marks about rushing the quarterback on defense.
Well, you know, Spurrier would still be the coach if that's the case. No, it's one of those keys that Key was a guy that pretty much had the closest end I've seen that South Carolina's recruited that had to get off as a Clowney, because I thought South Carolina fans got tremendously spoiled if they thought that they were going to see a defensive end every year that had the explosiveness of Clowney. But Key, pretty much not as big as Clowney, but still he's got that get off that is very difficult for an end to have. He's just that quick first step that he has is just absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, that's what makes him a great player. So we're going to hear from those folks. Also, we have a contact who is covering the All-Star game in Miami for us. Of course, tonight is the Home Run Derby. A lot of other festivities surrounding that. Tomorrow it is the All-Star game itself. Jeff Miller will join us from Miami at 7:30. And I do believe we've got an interview with USC's Justin Smoke, who, of course, had a great first half of the season. This is more or less the first half of the season, and was selected for the All-Star game. So we'll have that for you as well. By the way, we might hear from Oliver Francis with his team from Columbia, the rec league team from Columbia. They ended up going 3-2 in the tournament in Miami that they were playing in. So that was quite an accomplishment, considering, as he put it, the team had only been together for a few weeks. It's not a traveling team. It's a rec team out of Columbia, but congratulations to his group. They went 3-2, and now they're spending a couple of days in Miami. They were going over to All-Star festivities tonight to give those young kids a taste of Major League Baseball.
Oh, that's good. That's the experience those kids will talk about from now to the end of time, I guess. Because I remember the All-Star game I went to, and I think it was in Atlanta back in 72 or 73. And that was an experience to see all those guys in one place at that time. Back then, you're talking about Aaron and Reggie Jackson and that crew back then.
Yeah, quite a thrill to see all that talent together on one field. And I think they'll have a pretty good All-Star game again this time. And if my memory serves me right, I think they have dropped the winner gets the home field advantage in the World Series, right? They've done away with that, have they not?
I hope they have.
Yeah, I think they have, if my memory's right. I think they finally they did away with that. Okay. The phone number, 800-956-7266. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com. On Twitter @SportsTalkSC. Look forward to your phone calls tonight. Go ahead and join in on the program.
And also tonight, I can drop it in while Corn is recycling, is the fact that I don't know if anybody paid attention to the game the other night. Just looking at the Summer League game, and Sindarius Thornwell just quietly showed a lot of leadership in that game. I think 32 minutes, 26 points, something like 5 rebounds, and assists, 2 steals. So he had a tremendous debut. I think PJ, if he got in the game, it was just a little bit in that game for the Lakers, because it was the Lonzo Ball show. They wanted to show out Lonzo Ball, who
did not do as well as Thornwell did. Thornwell was the point leader on that board.
Yeah, he was tremendous. And I thought PJ Carlesimo said it the best, is because he looked up and he had 18 points. He said, "Well, wait a minute, Corn, we were talking about the game the other night where I guess Thornwell had 26 points for the Summer League team, and Carlesimo said he was looking up. He didn't know he had that many. He was playing a quiet, pro-like demeanor about him."
For Thornwell to get things started. Unfortunately for P.J. Dozier, I don't think in the first 2 Summer League games for the Lakers he's gotten in, has he?
I don't think he has. But here's the key point. I understand that I think maybe in a practice, Lonzo Ball tweaked his ankle. So as they say, opportunity knocks.
Yeah,
take advantage of it.
Yes. And, of course, Lonzo Ball played much better the second game than the first. And here we are talking about NBA Summer League like it really means something. And maybe for some of these guys, maybe for Thornwell, it's going to give them something additionally to think about with him and players like that trying to make a roster when October rolls around. But putting way too much emphasis on NBA Summer League here in July. But I guess because we have a couple of local guys participating is why we're paying more attention to it. As I was saying before, the line pooped out on me, 800-956-7266. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com. And on Twitter @SportsTalkSC is how you can reach us tonight. Jared Rogers-Martin back at our studio in Columbia, taking your phone calls, getting you lined up for us. We'll have recruiting for you as well. Of course, number of things to talk about there as things continue to roll along recruiting-wise here in July. We've gotten out of the dead period, so things are going to start picking up. More on that coming up, and we'll be back in just a second. Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut in Alabama for SEC Media Days. Professor Tom Hayes back at our studios in Columbia with Jared Rogers Martin, who took the red eye back from Denver overnight. So we've all been doing a lot of traveling, getting to our appointed destinations, but we're in place and rocking and rolling. 800-956-7266. Can't you feel it? Can't you feel the football in the air? Despite it being 96, 97 degrees, it's going to be a hot late July, August of camp for these football players. I already feel for them just thinking about those guys being on the practice fields. Of course, one thing teams are doing to offset that is practicing early in the morning or at night to avoid the heat of the day. So I'm sure the players appreciate that. But it's coming fast. It's coming fast. You can always tell when July 4th, that week, is over and done with. The activity from the colleges picks up enormously with emails and information and this, that, and the other. And of course, corresponding with Media Day here today and ACC Media Day Thursday and Friday. A lot is happening very, very quickly. 800-956-7266 is our phone number. USC will be here on Thursday. Last night, the Gamecocks put out their depth chart for the upcoming season. We put that out on Twitter for you. But if you haven't had a chance to glance at it, it's pretty much standard from what it was in the spring. On the offensive side, at wide receiver, you've got Deebo Samuel backed up by Rodriguez Davis or Corey Banks. And the other receiver, you have Brian Edwards backed up by Chavis Dawkins. And then three receiver sets, you've got Terry Guger backed up by Ortre Smith. I never know. Is it Guger or Guger? What does he prefer?
Guger.
Soft G?
Yeah.
Soft G to go with the soft hands. The left tackle is Malik Young backed up by Sandarius Hutcherson, who checks in at 316 pounds. The left guard is Donnell Stanley, backed up by DJ Park. Stanley's 317, and Park is listed at 337. That's a couple of Dillon County boys right there, one from Latta, of course, the other from Dillon. The center is Alan Knott, backed up by Corey Helms, with Helms the right guard, backed up by Park. The right tackle is Zach Bailey, backed up by Blake Camper. The tight end is Hayden Hurst, backed up by Jacob August. Casey Crosby is also a tight end, backed up by Keel Pollard. Jake Bentley is the quarterback, backed up by Michael Scarnecchia.
Well, I think the key point is the depth chart of the offensive line, because even though you have more athletic guys at tackle, you almost want to early in the year are going to blitz South Carolina to see if their backs, A, can pick up the blitz and not try to and let's see what those tackles do, Corn, on an island when they're playing.
Absolutely. And Zach Bailey, of course, making the move from guard to tackle. Blake Camper playing well in the spring, trying to force a hand there as well. But that gives them some more depth at tackle. And I think the key is going to be, you got two guys. You got Bailey on one side, and you've got Young on the other side, and they're both inexperienced at playing the tackle position in college. Now to the running backs, it's, of course, Rico Dowdle or Tyson Williams or A.J. Turner. One of those three at running back. The defensive side for the Gamecocks looks like this. You've got Dante Sawyer and Kier Thomas at one defensive end spot. Taylor Stallworth, Kobe Smith at one defensive tackle. Ulrich Jones or Kobe Smith at the other defensive tackle. DJ Wanham and Daniel Fennell at the other defensive end. Linebackers, Bryson Allen Williams backed up by Antoine Wilder. TJ Brunson backed up by Sky Moore, or Sky Moore starting at the outside backer, backed up by Bryson Allen Williams. So they're having to double up as far as guys playing more than one position. Need some depth there at linebacker Jamarcus King at one corner, backed up by Chris Lamons. Safety DJ Smith, backed up by Jalen Dickerson. The other safety is Stephen Montag, backed up by Javon Charleston. The other corner, Rashad Fenton, backed up by Chris Lamons. The nickel is Lamons, backed up by DJ Smith. So that is what it looks like for the Gamecocks as far as the top 22. And the Gamecocks will add some more names to that depth chart as the freshmen work their way in to the plans here at the beginning of fall camp. Certainly a guy like Jamias Williams is going to get an early look at corner. You're going to see him play quite a bit, I would think. Maybe MJ Webb up front as well. There'll be a number of freshmen and players who were redshirted last year who are going to have to step in and play very early for the Gamecocks. 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Email talkback at SportsTalkSC.
And when you look at that depth chart, I think the key, if any freshman is going to break in early, boy, you're almost tempted to say it's going to be Ortre Smith. Because if you have a Brian Williams on one side at 6'3", and another guy around 6'2", 6'3", giving you big wideouts on the ends, and then you've got Debo Samuel maybe sliding inside to the slot, you can open up a lot of things right down the middle of the field and throwing the other freshman, Shai Smith from Union. But a guy like Rodriguez Davis, who showed real promise last year, but hurt the hammy early. I'm not sure if they kicked in the medical red shirt or not. Corn could tell us about that. But this guy has a great pair of hands, and he's got those quick moves, not exceptionally fast, but quick moves to get separation on defensive backs. So I think you're going to see a lot of mixing and matching as far as the wide receivers are concerned. But Corn talked about freshmen breaking in. I got to say the Smith guys, Ortre Smith from the Low Country and Shai Smith from Union, are probably the guys I see breaking in a little bit early on the offense. But the big key is going to be up front. Can they protect Jake Bentley? And Jake Bentley is one of those quarterbacks where you tell the lineman, either you block, get run over slowly, or learn how to hold, because you want to protect the quarterback.
I mean, but one thing that's really going to help that line is just the sheer number of options that the Gamecocks now have. Like you were saying, with Smith out there, I mean, you got Hayden Hurst back. I mean, it's just a lot of different sheer numbers that he can throw to. You know, you just can't lock two players down and shut down the passing game.
Yeah, and I think when you mention options, one thing I did not bring up, which is interesting, is the playbook is going to be a little bit more complicated. Last year, as I said, they were feeding guys pablum. You know, you had the playbook, general plays, here you go. And any defensive coordinator can figure out what you're doing when they look at the film and watch you execute. Well, they're going to line up in this. They're going to do
How many
this.
games did it take you before you knew all the Gamecocks plays this year?
I really don't figure it out. I'm looking at keys. I could see where guys line up. Here we go. Here's the run. See, I believe in the old San Francisco 49ers deal when they had Joe Montana. Put 3 tight ends in the game and throw. Put 4 wideouts in the game. Everybody, oh, well, they're going to throw. And they run out of it. You know, they didn't do that all the time, but San Francisco is one of the teams I saw early on that would self-analyze the team during the season. What are we doing? What do we look like? What are our tendencies? They know we're going to do this out of that formation. So they switch things up. I think South Carolina, not so much switching things up, but more pages in the playbook is going to give them more variety of plays that defensive coordinators are going to have to work on. And, of course, I think we have Commissioner Sankey is coming up. We're going to hear from him. And the Cajun himself, Ed Orgeron of LSU, we'll hear from him. And Brett Bielema, wonder what his job security is like at Arkansas. He was looking great guns a couple of years ago. Now they seem to be falling back on hard times a little toward the end of the last season. We'll hear from him coming up as well on this Monday edition of Sports Talk and Phil Kornblut at SEC Media Days down in Birmingham.
Okay, we're back. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut, where it's hot and dry in Alabama, but back in South Carolina, I understand we're getting pounded by some storms, some heavy rain and lightning in the Columbia area, I think affecting our transmission receiving in the Columbia. So hopefully things will hold together here moving forward. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. We're here for SEC Media Days. We've got coverage from the World Series, the All-Star preparation down in Miami coming your way as well. And we're going to hear from some of the coaches here at the SEC Media Days. Later in the week, we'll have the ACC Media Days covered for you as well. That's Thursday and Friday. USC does not show up here until Thursday morning. That seems a long way off as we sit here today. Today we had Arkansas, Tennessee, and LSU come through, plus the commissioner shared some thoughts. In fact, let's hear from the commissioner and his thoughts about being back at SEC Media Days. Greg Sankey, he always addresses the media to kick off SEC Media Days, then takes a few questions afterwards. It was a long, drawn-out thing. He was praising a lot of the success, of course, the league had with championship teams making championship games and things of that nature, the academic success around the league. He touched on a few hot point issues as well, such as transfer rules. I think if I read him correctly, he is in favor of being a little more player-friendly when it comes to some of the transfer situations. He also talked about extending the season to 14 weeks with 2 bye weeks for the teams. I think that's something that he's in favor of as well. And he also made a major point in talking about the history, the 85th anniversary of the SEC this year, and his feeling that the league has become, of course, very diverse and all accepting of people of all of both genders and all races and things of that nature. And he cited as an example of that his trip to Columbia back in April to be a part of the festivities and part of the parade to honor the USC women's basketball team for winning the national championship. We pick up his remarks talking about going to Columbia and experiencing all that.
In April of this year, I saw an incredible picture of what Dr. King described in his observation, that we're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. It was April 9th, a Sunday. I was invited to join in the parade in Columbia, South Carolina, celebrating the Gamecocks National Championship in women's basketball. And as I rode through the parade, you can imagine there was a smile on my face for 2 reasons. One, we had the 2 teams playing in this year's women's basketball national championship game, Mississippi State and South Carolina. But the other reason was because as I rode through that parade route and looked at the people cheering, what I saw were in the crowd men and women, young and old, all different socioeconomic statuses, black and white, all different ethnicities, all joined together in celebrating their team. And that celebration concluded on the steps of the South Carolina State Capitol, where 2 years ago, through the leadership of many in that state, and following a tragic shooting in a Charleston church, the Confederate battle flag was lowered and removed from the state capitol grounds for a final time. The result is opportunity for young people. When last March, the SEC and the NCAA returned basketball tournaments to Greenville, South Carolina. For us, the first time since 2005 that had occurred. It should also not be missed that when an African-American woman, Dawn Staley, stands on the steps of that state capitol as the coach, joined by her team, with throngs of fans recognizing her leadership and the achievement of that team. She's there not only as the coach of the Gamecocks, but also of the United States women's basketball national team. It's then that we understand that whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly.
All right, the commissioner of the SEC, as he was speaking today, got a little emotional there, it sounded like to me. Greg Sankey, when talking about what he saw in Columbia, the huge throng of people that came out and welcomed the USC women and their national championship. The point being, his belief, of course, that the SEC's come a long, long way over its 85 years from being an exclusive organization in a league to becoming all-inclusive for all to see, and he's very proud of that fact.
Yeah, and I think probably he wants to mention that because it actually has opened up more opportunities, and I think the people of South Carolina probably listening to that understand why it was important that the moves were made so that the tournaments can come back to South Carolina. And, of course, Columbia will see that, in another year when a part of the men's basketball tournament will come to Columbia.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all good news and good things happening around the SEC there. A couple of other things to tell you about. Well, the watch lists will start trickling out now with the season not too far off. It's close enough to where the watch lists for the various postseason awards will start coming out. So the Maxwell Club and the Bednarik Award watch lists were announced today. And on the Maxwell Club watch list, you have from USC Jake Bentley, Debo Samuel, and Sky Moore. I'm sorry, Sky Moore is on the Bednarik list. The other two are on the list for the Maxwell Award. And as far as Clemson is concerned, the Tigers have on the
And Corn has that list.
Yeah. They got Christian Wilkins and the ACC Rookie of the Year, Dexter Lawrence, representing Clemson for the other award, the Bednarik Award.
Dexter Lawrence is that's a man-child. I mean, I haven't seen a guy that big that can move in and out of the hole and then rush the passer. And then if he's fooled on a screen, he can get back there and tackle a guy coming out of the backfield. So they've got one of the game changers as far as defensive linemen are concerned, as far as Clemson is concerned. But the interesting thing is what I don't hear mentioned anymore, because I guess they got a lot more depth in the secondary, is Sky Moore, because of his ability to read the pass, and he could end up after this season being the leading guy as far as, I think, career interceptions for South Carolina coming up this season. But they had toyed with the idea early on before his injury that they were going to play him some as safety just to see what he could do back there. But I think probably with more depth this year after the recruiting 2 years, second year of recruiting under Muschamp, that they probably have kind of nixed that idea of putting him back there in the secondary. So Sky Moore, that defense, we'll see what happens there. Jake Bentley, it's not so much as a surprise, John Mart, but Jake Bentley's still kind of early in the infancy of his quarterbacking duties that he would be named to any watch list this quick.
And when you look at it, I mean, he had just over 1,400 yards last year and 9 touchdowns. I mean, you got to think that he's going to improve on that, but to be on a watch list might be a stretch just so early in his football career.
Yeah, but I could see where people see the talent. I mean, he's one of those guys that the flick of the wrist and the ball can go 50 yards. You know, he can find guys open. And he's one of those quarterbacks that I think people like, in that the fact he looks deep first. And if he sees it, he's going to throw it, by goodness. If he have to squeeze it through the eye of a needle, he'll try to pull it off.
And even if you don't make the pass, at least or you don't win the game, you got the exciting football of at least trying to go deep there.
There you go. And Debo Samuel with a healthy hamstring, that helps him out throwing the ball deep. And we'll throw it deep back to Birmingham and Phil Kornblut for SEC Media Days coming up. You stay tuned.
Can you hear me now? Now you can hear me?
I feel really good about where we're at. Obviously, the end of last season.
Okay, we're back with you, Sports Talk, reconnected once again. Let's hope that we hang in there with you here for the rest of the program. Phil Kornblut at SEC Media Days. Professor Tom Hayes back at our studios in Columbia. 800-956-7266 if you'd like to join in on the program. Our poll question tonight on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, is actually about Clemson. This is our poll question of the week. What will be Clemson's predicted finish in the Atlantic Division by ACC media? So far, about 55% say second, 24% say the Tigers are going to win the division, and about 21% say the Tigers will come in third in their division. The ACC has its media days coming your way later on this week. We are here in the Birmingham Hoover area for SEC Media Days, and we had 3 teams come through today. Tennessee was the last team to come through the main room. We'll hear from Bush Jones a little bit later on. We had Ed Orgeron from LSU in as well, and LSU on paper looks really good. They've got the outstanding running. Even though they lose Leonard Fournette, they have Darius Geis back, 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns. Danny Etlin's back at quarterback, 2,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. And I mentioned Arden Key returns to head up the defense off of his 12 sacks from last year. They do only return 5 starters on defense, so they got to do a little bit of a rebuilding job there. But LSU, they recruit so well. They have such a deep roster of talent. You feel like they're going to find players to step up and do the job. But Orgeron steps in at LSU with not an overly impressive record as a head coach. He was 10-25 at Ole Miss, only 3-21 in the SEC. But they were impressed with how he finished up last year, 6-2 and 4-2 in conference play last year. LSU was just a few points away from having that fabulous season. They lost to Wisconsin to open the season in Green Bay, lost that game by 2, lost at Auburn. That was probably their worst loss of the season by 5. Lost a 10-point game to Alabama at home, 10-0, got shut out. Lost to Florida 16-10. So, I mean, they were in every one of their ball games. They're just losing to Alabama is just something that they just can't tolerate it at LSU anymore, and that's probably one of the reasons that Les Miles was shown the door and Orgeron was brought in with a bunch of new staff members, and he's excited about his next go-around as a head coach in the SEC. Now, another coach, I don't know that he's on the hot seat yet, Brett Bielema, who became a father just a couple of days ago, so people should be nice to him while he's riding that cloud. But he's going into year 5 at Arkansas, and he's only 25-26 in 4 years there, and 10-22 in the SEC in his time there. So, including that horrible start, we went 0-8 that first year. Here is what he had to say looking ahead to the 2017 season. He lost his top running back in the spring, a returning running back who had 1,400 yards rushing last year, but he suffered a neck injury in the spring game, the second time he had suffered such an injury, and so he retired from the game. I'm talking about Raleigh Williams III, very good running back. Another running back went down with an injury as well, so he reached out and brought in David Williams, the grad transfer from USC. But here he is, first of all, talking about looking ahead to this season and what he hopes will be kind of a breakthrough year for him with the Hogs.
I feel really good about where we're at. Obviously, the end of last season was a unique situation for me in the fact, even when we went 3-9, which I've never had a losing season in my career, other than that first year at Arkansas, I felt at the end of the year we were getting better and moving in the right direction. And last year, our last 2 games were not highlights. They were, especially the way they both ended. So I knew we had to take some new looks at things. So we took a internal look at us coaching-wise, what we were asking them to do, how we were asking them to do it. Took an even stronger look at our personnel, which made us drive the decision to change to a 3-4. And then bottom line, what we were going to do moving forward in January. And our kids have been great. They've owned and embraced what we didn't do well at the end of the year, focused on what we can do well. We're going to focus on winning games in the second half, not losing them, putting our best personnel on the field, no matter how that comes about, and then really trying to play and understand what it means to be at Arkansas and have that come through. I've had a lot of former players, players that were before my time, as well players that have been there with us that have had success come in and talk to our guys about what it means to be a Razorback. I think that's been a huge, huge thing. So very excited where we're at and where we're continuing to go. We start camp a little bit earlier than everybody else because we play a Thursday night game in Little Rock, which should be a really neat experience for us. It gives us an extra day of preparation as we go into an opportunity to play TCU, another crossover game in our league that should be a lot of fun. We have a bye week before we go play A&M in Jerry's World over in Cowboy Stadium, and then the rest of our schedule lays out in a pretty good, favorable fashion. Last year, I think we had 2 or 3 teams that had bye weeks before they play us. Nobody has a bye week before they play us this year, which I think is a nice stroke for us in the right regards in scheduling. So with that, open up for some questions.
Stephen Smith, Touchdown Alabama magazine. Coach, Jared Cornelius had a big game last year for the Crimson Tide. I think he had 5 catches for 146 yards. Who are some guys after him that are really starting to grow in your mind?
Yeah, Jay Red is a tremendously talented player. I think we did a postseason study that showed that he was actually one of the most productive slot receivers in all of college football last year with the numbers of receptions he had and the number of snaps he took. A very, very confident young man. I think he'll have his best year going to his senior year. At wide receiver, we signed 2 junior college players that I feel really have adapted the game well that we brought in and have made a nice impact on us, as well as a couple younger players in our program, Deion Stewart, LaMichael Petway, some guys that I think can step up into a role that's pretty significant. And they've been working really hard. I know Ben Herbert in the weight room has felt good about what they're doing, and we're excited to get them out there.
Coach Bill Bender, Sporting News. How has the continuity on the offensive line improved throughout the spring, and how can you continue to build around that with Frank?
Great point. So one of the things that we do is, like even in our spring game, we go ones against the world. I believe with offensive line play, you have 5 guys that are attached in everything that they do. You always see old linemen, they all go eat together. They all go watch a movie together. They all go do everything together because we breed that in our program. Because for that left tackle, he's playing next to the left guard, but he needs to understand what the center's yelling and doing or what the right guard's going to do on a kickout play. There's a continuity that has to develop, and we have 6 guys that have started SEC football games for us now on the offensive line. That's so much of an improvement from a year ago. Coach Anderson's had another year with this group. We've had a better addition. You know, one of the major issues with us last year in protection and taking care of our quarterback and being able to run a football is we just did not have enough of SEC quality offensive linemen in our program. I myself had not done what I needed to do to give us the numbers early on in those classes to get us there, or some guys had left a little bit early because they played well. So I feel really, really good about where that group is. I like the fact that they've taken some shots and they've survived, and I really think that they're in a mode to really prove some things this fall.
Jordan.
All right, Brett Bielema from Arkansas, and I don't know. We went over some hot list coaches on the hot seat list not too long ago. I think he might have been one of those that was listed as somebody who's got to pick it up a little bit.
Well, you know, his team got their running game cranked up in the passing game, about a year and a half ago, and it looked like things were going their way, and then they stumbled down the stretch. I think they have one upset at LSU that got everybody excited. But they're probably treading water right now to see if they can at least finish at 500.
Well, one thing he does have is a good quarterback, Austin Allen, who followed his brother as a starting quarterback at Archie last year. 3,430 yards and 25 touchdowns, along with 15 interceptions. But that's not a Bielema-type team. I mean, he's a running guy. He loves to line up behind the big offensive line and just jam it down your throat. But with a quarterback who can sling it like that, he might be more inclined to go that route this year. Okay, we'll be back, top of the hour.
To how he handled that and the progress you've seen since then going into this spring.
Well, Austin's a smart dude, man. He's one of the things that I grabbed when BA became you can also learn back in the SEC. Is not an easy task on the field or off the field. You got a lot of yards he had, and maybe he's not a factor or all this, all that. We at Arkansas we had conversations about that. I wouldn't do anything but truly sit back and watch a guy that I think is going
to. And why would that be?
100% go by fall camp. And the other and they fed off one another. So in the spring, the line's quicker and a little bit more simplistic to multiple offenses in a short amount of time. And that should help us.
I almost drop and come back up. Okay, here we go. Coming down in 3, 2, 1. Defensive back Trey Dean of Hampton, Georgia, continues to do it again. In 3, 2, 1. Defensive back Trey Dean of Hampton, Georgia, has a short list of USC, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Michigan. Plus, he just recently picked up an offer from Oklahoma. He says USC's in touch with him every day. The Gamecocks want him to come back in for a visit. He might do that, and he might visit Clemson and Florida State as well. Right now, he gives a nod to Texas as the leader. He announces July 31st. McCormick running back Mateo Durant committed to Duke. Greer defensive back Quavian White will announce July 22nd for Wisconsin, Georgia State, or Appalachian State. Conway defensive end offensive lineman Raekwon O'Neal will announce on August 16th. And linebackers Kobe McLean of Valdosta, Georgia, has USC in his final 10. Phil Kornbluth, South Carolina Radio Network Sports. Phil Kornblut, South Carolina Radio Network Sports. Radio Network Sports. Phil Kornblut, South Carolina Radio Network Sports. Phil Kornblut, South Carolina Radio Network Sports. Phil Kornblut, South Carolina Radio Network Sports. And linebackers Jacoby McClain of Valdosta. And linebackers Jacoby McClain of Valdosta, Georgia. Defensive back Trey Dean of Hampton, Georgia has defensive back.
Don't stop now. More sports talk is on its way. Listen to the final word in sports all across the state with your host, Phil Kornblut.
And welcome to the second hour of Sports Talk here on the South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut with us from Birmingham, Alabama at SEC Media Days. And, of course, we'll hear from some festivities at the All-Star Game as well. And mentioned one Carolina guy who has a hot bat as far as the American League is concerned, and Justin Smoke.
Yeah, Justin Smoke's had a great first half of the season, and Jeff Miller caught up with him. We'll hear from Justin coming up in a little bit, and Jeff's going to join us at the bottom of the hour to fill us in on the day around the All-Stars down in Miami. That's got to be a lot of fun, just hanging out down there. I wonder if the roof is open or closed down there at the
From what
at
I'm
the
looking
Marlins
at
Park
now, it looks like it's
for the
closed.
festivities. I guess it'll be open for tonight, don't you think?
Well, I'm looking at them practicing now for the home run derby, and it's closed. So I don't know. Maybe it's hot there, and they think more fans will come in if the roof is closed.
I always want it open. I don't care if it's hot. Part of baseball is just being outside.
Well, it depends. It's weird that some these stadiums now they can convert. Some the ball carries with the roof open. Others carry better when the roof is closed. So maybe they want the roof closed because it's the home run derby.
I mean, how far do you think Judge can launch it tonight? Do you think he'll be able to hit those?
I have no idea.
No.
Yeah, because the debate now is we're seeing resurgence in the home runs. Now everybody wants to say that now that they've gotten away from the juice in the needle, they're thinking the ball is juiced, which the commissioner denies.
Well, it could be. Well, I mean, the person who Justin Smoke wanted to win is that Aaron Judge's, but he talked a lot about all the 23 home runs that he got this year that got him to the All-Star game. That's 6th in the major league so far. That's the 6th most home runs. And he said it wasn't always like that in his major career. He took a little bit of adjustment to get that, and he talked a little bit about that adjustment in becoming an All-Star.
As a young kid, high school, college, even in the minor leagues, I never tried to hit home runs. And I feel like when I got called up to the big leagues, I wanted to be that power guy, the guy that hit 40 home runs. You know what I mean? I wanted to be that guy, and my swing got long. I tried to do too much, and honestly, this year I went to just trying to be competitive, have competitive at bats, and square the ball up. And as well as I do, like, you hit homers not trying to hit them. I mean, it just happens. And I feel like I'm big and strong enough. If I square it up, it's going to have a chance. And it took me a while to get to that point. But at times I forgot how I even hit as a kid. You know what I mean? Because I changed so many different things trying to be that power guy, and now it's just trying to really have good at bats and compete.
Who do you got for home run derby? Who's your pick?
I want the big man right here. I mean, just to watch his BP. I mean, Aaron Judge, this guy is. I was standing at home plate. He hit that ball to left center field in Yankee Stadium over the bleachers, and we just got done playing there a week or so ago. And I'm standing at home plate during BP, and I'm like, I couldn't hit a ball twice and hit it that far. And I mean, it's going to be impressive. It really is.
Your first All-Star game and you're starting. How's that?
It's exciting. I feel like your goal is always to want to make the All-Star team, and you never know if you're going to be a starter or not. But to be able to start the game, it's great. I'm excited for that, and really looking forward to it.
So you want to give a shout out to your high school and to your college real quick?
Yeah, I mean, Stratford Knights down there in Goose Creek, and the University of South Carolina, the Gamecocks, man. I mean, yeah, I was, born and raised a Gamecock fan, and glad to see that they've done well the last few years, and hopefully they can turn around a little bit.
Do you ever get a chance to get back there and check out a game?
You know what? My first game was 2 years ago. I went back. They always start right when spring training starts, so it's always been hard, but I finally got to go back and see them play, and they were actually playing the College of Charleston, which is where Monty Lee was. Monty Lee was one of my coaches there in South Carolina. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
One more Gamecocks question is how about the basketball team this past year, huh?
Oh, it's great. I mean, it's definitely it's locker room talk. You know what I mean? Nobody really knew we had a basketball team till this past year. Everybody knew we had a women's team, but yeah, it's been awesome, man. Coach Martin's turned it around, and I think everybody's excited for South Carolina athletics now.
All right, Justin, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, somebody needs to tell Justin that Monty's not at the College of Charleston anymore. He's up in the upstate now. He's probably too busy to even realize that. He's really had a nice career. He's now 8 years into his major league career, 129 career homers. That's an average of 23 per year. And he's hit double-digit home runs every season except for 2014 in Seattle when he was limited to just 80 games. I think he had some injury issues going on there. So his power pro from day one, stepping into the majors, has been consistent, and he's having the best year of his career right now with 23 home runs, and he's batting .294. That's a career high for him as well. So it's all kind of come together for him a little bit.
Yeah, and he talked about it. He may have tried to do too many things as far as hitting home runs, and you just can't try to hit them. We've seen guys with very compact swings. They can hit the ball 380, 400 feet. And he's just one of those guys. It took a little while to mature, learn the pitchers that's pitching against you, and just make sure that you lay this when you take a swing, just lay the sweet part of the bat on the ball, and you get it out of the ballpark. And that's what he's done.
Well, thanks to Jeff Miller for that. We'll hear from Jeff coming up in just a little bit. Let me go ahead and give you recruiting, and then we'll hear from Tennessee coach Butch Jones coming up after the break. Defensive back Trey Dean of Hampton, Georgia, was offered earlier last week by Oklahoma. South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Michigan have been his top schools. He made 2 visits to USC this year, one in January and one in April. He says the Gamecocks are in touch with him practically every day. He's going to be visiting Texas, and he wants to get to Florida State and Clemson if he can. Clemson has started to contact him. He's heard from Mike Reed, and they'd like for him to come in. They can't offer him until he comes in, he's been told. So his current favorites list: USC, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Michigan, Oregon, and UCLA, with Texas out in front just a little bit. He's going to announce July 31st at a ceremony at his school at 8 o'clock. McCormick running back Mateo Durant committed to Duke. Just looking at some of the other players around the state who are going outside the state: defensive lineman Kalijah Brown of Saluda, and defensive back Zion Keith of Wilson, and place kicker Nick Scuba of Clover. They're going to Wake. Offensive lineman Jordan McFadden of Dorman, and linebacker Eli Adams of South Point of Virginia Tech. Place kicker Skylar DeLong of Nation Ford to Tennessee. Quarterback Trad Beatty of Ben Lippen to Temple. Wide receiver DeMarcus Gregory of Burns to Ole Miss. Linebacker Khalid Jones of Burns to Northwestern. Defensive back Elijah Rogers of Blacksburg to Indiana. Wide receiver Dennis Smith of Gaffney to Duke. Linebacker Zarian Hayes of Dillon to Appalachian State. Greer defensive back Quavian White will announce July 22nd. Wisconsin, Georgia State, and Appalachian State, his top 3. Conway defensive end and offensive lineman Raekwon O'Neal plans to announce on August the 16th. He has not narrowed his list down to just a few. USC target defensive lineman Rick Sandage of Concord, North Carolina, will visit Georgia this week, USC next week. Linebackers Kobe McLean of Valdosta, Georgia, has USC in his final 10, along with Auburn, LSU, Tennessee, West Virginia, Oregon, Nebraska, Michigan State, Tulane, and Ole Miss. We'll come back and give you a little basketball and a Clemson baseball commitment. Back with more sports talk in a moment. All right, let's wrap up the recruiting report for tonight. Then we're going to hear from Tennessee coach Butch Jones, who was one of the 3 head coaches to come through SEC Media Days today. But some basketball news for you. USC coach Frank Martin last week offered a player who perhaps he sees as a similar type player as Sindarius Thornwell, who's now trying to make it in the NBA, 6'6" shooting guard Aaron Neesmith of Porter Gaud, who also picked up an offer last week from Virginia Tech. He says it means a lot to get an offer from Frank Martin. He knows him well, knows his son well. Martin's son played with Neesmith on their AAU team last year, so he knows them really, really well. And Martin likes him as a big guard who can shoot and defend. That's what he has told Neesmith, who also has offers from Winthrop, College of Charleston, Wofford, Charleston Southern, Furman, Yale, Columbia, East Carolina, Charlotte, and Austin Peay. Says right now not favoring anybody. He was at USC for a visit in June. He'll make a return trip in August. He will sign in November, but he plans to commit prior to that. 6'7" Jimmy Nichols Jr. of Conway was offered by Pitt. He also has offers from Miami, Rice, Rutgers, Old Dominion, Georgetown, and VCU. 2019, 6'6" Josiah James of Porter Gaud was offered by Oklahoma. And in baseball, outfielder Chris Ruckdeschel of Davie, Florida, committed to Clemson. That's for the 2018 class. And there you go with recruiting for tonight. Don't forget to check it out on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. And on Twitter, use the hashtag STRecruiting. All right, a little bit more from here at the SEC Media Days. Day 1 in the books. We had the commissioner, and we had the 3 head coaches. We heard from Brett Bielema a little bit earlier. Now to Tennessee and Coach Butch Jones. The Vols, of course, trying to get back to a level of competing for championships, a place they haven't been in a good while. But back-to-back 9-win seasons has the Vols optimistic. Butch Jones now going into what will be year number 5 for him at Tennessee, where he is 30-21 in his first 4 years, 14-18 at Tennessee in the SEC. That's certainly not what the Vols are expecting. His team coming up this year will return 16 starters, 7 on offense, 7 on defense, but they do have to replace the quarterback who was the man in charge for several years, Josh Dobbs. Alvin Kamara, exciting running back, is gone. Big-time receiver Josh Malone is gone, and several good players off the defense, including the All-American Derek Barnett. So they got a little bit of work to do in terms of replacing some key people there, and it starts at the quarterback position. However, despite all that, and despite catching some criticism from Vols fans who aren't exactly crazy about the way things are going, especially the inability to beat Alabama, so many of these longtime SEC teams that go through coaches is because they can't beat Alabama consistently anymore. Anyway, Jones feels like things are still good in Knoxville. Things are still positive, and he thinks they're going to prove something to people this coming year.
We're very proud of the fact that it's very, very difficult to win in the Southeastern Conference, and we're one of only 3 programs that have won 9 games 2 years in a row. We've been very fortunate to have 3 straight bowl victories, first time in 20 years in our great program's history and tradition. But there's so much more out there. There's so much more out there to be accomplished, and we've only started. And that's what I like about this year's football team, is they're very, very driven, very, very motivated. The 3 individuals here today, I think, are very symbolic of our football program and the evolution and development of our program over 4 years. It starts with Jay Sean Robertson, offensive lineman for us. Jay Sean was recruited as a defensive lineman, spent a week in training camp as a defensive lineman, and because of the limited number of offensive linemen that we had at that time in our program, we asked him to move over, and he started every game as a true freshman and ended up being a freshman All-American. Emmanuel Mosley, I'm being kind to him, was 145 pounds at the time. He was an option quarterback and won a state championship, came 2 times to our camps in the summer to earn a scholarship. And the way he's grown in our football program and developed his body is truly remarkable. And then Kendall Vickers, I was joking with him on the plane flying over here. He was a 215-pound defensive end wide receiver. And I remember in practice watching him catch passes, and now he's developed himself into what I feel is one of the best defensive tackles in our conference. It's been a very, very productive offseason for us, probably the most competitive offseason that we've had. And a lot of that is attributed to our players, to our leadership, but also to the addition of Rock Gullickson in the strength and conditioning area. And Rock has been a 17-year veteran in the National Football League and has really kind of changed the dynamics in that room, along with the entire strength and conditioning staff. We have to replace some very, very good football players. We had 6 drafted players in the first 4 rounds of the National Football League draft this past year. That hasn't been done in Tennessee since in 15 years. So again, that's how far we've come in our program.
Hey, Coach Bob Holt, Arkansas
Bob.
Democrat Gazette. Obviously, Josh Dobbs did a lot of stuff for you guys for a long time. What's it going to be like replacing him? What's your quarterback situation going into fall camp?
Sure. Well, again, you're replacing an individual who really leaves a legacy at the University of Tennessee, and Joshua Dobbs, in everything that he brought to the quarterback position. When he was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was the highest drafted quarterback since Peyton Manning in our program's history. So he's brought a lot. But I'm really, really excited about the quarterbacks that we have in our program. And I think the competition at that position has really elevated the level of play of everyone else around them. You have 2 kind of distinct different personalities. You have a young individual in Jarrett Garantano who's very energetic, very demonstrative, very passionate, and very, very talented. And then Quentin Dormady is a coach's son who's kind of been in our football program. And so a little bit different in terms of personality-wise, but these 2 individuals are very, very, very talented. And the great thing about these 2 individuals, we talked to our young football team about this all spring, is compete and don't compare. And they've been able to do that, but they also have the mutual respect towards each other that they're still helping each other out, and that's been great to see. So I think it's a great issue to have. We will not name a starting quarterback until the time is right. I can't tell you what that is. That'll be decided, obviously, on the field when we start training camp.
Okay, the comments of Butch Jones at Tennessee got to deal with the quarterback issue. That's what happens when you lose a longtime starter and nobody behind him gets much playing time. The Vols will open up at home against Indiana State, but not – I'm sorry, back that up. They open up on September 4th, a Monday night, against Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Boy, imagine, Pro, you're the defensive coaching staff at Tennessee, and you've had to spend all offseason and preseason camp getting ready for that triple option of Georgia Tech.
Well, you almost don't want to do that because that junks your kind of mental preparation for the rest of the season, because that's the only time they'll see it. But if you're going to break them in on a team like that, that's all well to the good, because that offense, one of the things it does is neutralize the pass rush. And since they lose Derek Barnett, who I think was drafted in the top 15 in the NFL this year, maybe it's good this first time out they can break in a new defensive end trying to play that option.
Indiana State's their home opener on the 9th. Then they go to Florida. They get UMass at home, Georgia at home, an open date, and then they play South Carolina in Knoxville on October the 14th. All right, there you go. Butch Jones from UT. When we come back, down to the All-Star Pre-game festivities, all the happenings the day before, the big game coming up. Well, there's only one thing in the country bigger than what's going on here in Hoover, Alabama for SEC Football Media Days, and that would, of course, be the All-Star Game, which comes up tomorrow night in Miami, where I'm sure the temperature is high and the weather is beautiful and everything else surrounding the game is outstanding, including the upcoming Home Run Derby tonight. Let's welcome in Jeff Miller, who's a sports correspondent for iHeartMedia in Milwaukee, also the Big 920 at News Talk 1130 WISN in Milwaukee, who is covering the All-Star Game for a number of different folks, including us, and we thank him for joining us tonight. Jeff, a busy day. How did everything go leading up to the home run derby tonight?
Buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? No, I think the Latin flavor has taken me over. This is fantastic down here in Miami. If anybody can put on a party, it's Miami. I mean, this is great. I've been to a number of these games, and I have to say I am having the most fun that I've ever had tonight in Miami.
Well, buenos dias, señor. ¿Cómo está usted?
Muy bien, muy bien.
Yeah, that's about the extent of it for me, too. What's the plan for the home run derby regarding the roof?
Well, right now the roof is closed. They're going to keep it closed tonight for the home run derby. And that is the plan. Giancarlo Stanton has mentioned that, you know, when the windows are open or if the roof is open, you get that swirling wind and it kind of keeps the ball down. So I think they want to put on a show tonight. They're going to keep it real controlled.
Did you get close to Aaron Judge, for example, as he was taking some BP today? And if so, what did that sound like and look like coming off his bat?
It was like an explosion every time. I mean, he hit some balls that I don't think if the roof was open, they'd still be sailing out of here. He is the king of exit velocity. We all know that. He is hitting the ball like you wouldn't believe. He's a mammoth of a man. I stood next to him, and it just, I mean, I'm no small guy, and I'm no real big guy, but this guy is huge. He's gonna put some sting on the ball tonight. That's for sure.
And so you got a guy like Giancarlo Stanton right there in Miami too, who can also hit some prodigious home runs. But I mean, is it different with Judge to even a guy like Stanton?
Well, you know what? It's just because right now, Judge right now is the hot topic, and he is going to hit the ball a ton, and he is the compliment to Giancarlo from the National League. Giancarlo and Justin Bohr have got 393 home runs in this park. Everybody else has only got 2. So I think a little bit has to do with Giancarlo being here before. I think he has a little bit of an edge that way, but Judge is going to give him a run for his money tonight.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. How about your conversation with Justin Smoke? We played that earlier, enjoyed hearing what he had to say. And it sounded like in your questioning and asking him about Judge, for example, I mean, he's just one example, but the other guys are kind of in awe of what this big rookie's been able to do.
Yes. Everybody that we talk to out on press row is amazed at what he is doing. I think they're amazed just because of the fact that he is a rookie, and the whole business of being in the major leagues and being on this big of a stage hasn't rattled them. I mean, it's only half of the season we get that, but he's doing it day in and day out, night in and night out. And to some of these veterans that have been in the game and have seen a number of Take Smoke, for example, he's been around a while, and to see someone like this to continue to keep on hitting the ball like he is with no fear, it's really impressive. And I think that's what he's got. That's the attention that he's got of all the other players.
Well, you know, it's interesting when you look at it. Years ago, everybody talked about, you know, the PEDs. Now, I don't know if you're getting any talk in the ballpark now, but it may sound blasphemous, but some people now, with the renaissance of the home run, they're saying now the ball is juiced. Are you hearing any talk about that around the baseball world?
Tom, it's a good thing that you brought that up. I did hear that. There's quite a few questions asked about that. One to Corey Canelo, a guy from Milwaukee. I was there when they asked him about it. He goes, he doesn't know, but what he's found is that he's tearing fingernails more often. And he said that doesn't normally happen. Talked to Brandon Kinsler also from the Twins. He said the same exact thing. One's in the American League, one's in the National League. So they are out on different times out on the track for us to interview. He said the same exact thing. He said, you know what? Covers are coming off of baseballs. Baseballs are splitting. Why is that happening? He didn't come out and say it's being juiced, but he said it sure is strange that now they're having more and more finger problems, and the cover is coming off the ball. So it was a non-answer to an answer, I guess.
How wild would it be? I'm looking at the bracket for the Home Run Derby. I mean, how wild would it be in Miami if Stanton faces off against Judge in the championship?
I think that's what they want. I think that's exactly what everybody wants here. They want to see the two big dogs go at it, just like you want to see in just about everything. You want to see the two big guys going. It would be wild, and for it to come down to the very end, like a couple of years ago when we spoke in Cincinnati, when Todd Frazier, it came down to the very last pitch every time. Man, this place would just erupt. I mean, it put even more fun and flair into Miami than there already is if Stanton were to pull that off.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be a packed house there. What's the atmosphere like around the park? What kind of fan turnout did they have today to watch BP and everything else? And what else is going on besides the Home Run Derby today?
Well, what they have going on, tomorrow they'll have the red carpet affair where they drive down in their vehicles to the ballpark. But what they have is they have a fan fest going on that's really kind of fantastic. They have some interactive games that the kids can play. It's really based more, I mean, for the fans, of course. It's really geared towards children and getting their juices flowing about baseball and about sports. And that's down right by the waterfront. And that's a lot of fun. They have got some ball player enhanced haircuts that they're having the kids. You can pick a haircut from a favorite ball player. They're going to cut your hair like that. They've got so many different things going on here. They had a concert last night, just a local concert, but they had everybody going on the ocean front. They had a fireworks display. It's really been fantastic down here. Like I said, they're really putting on a good show.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it. Now for the game, the actual game tomorrow night and the roof, do you know if it's going to be closed for that or they'll open it up?
You know what? They didn't say anything yet. I'm thinking if the weather is sticky like it is today and it's hot like this, they might just keep it closed for that. Like I said, there is nothing to be said, but I want to mention one more thing about tonight's tonight's Home Run Derby before we leave that topic, that they're going to have a special where they have these magenta baseballs. And if we don't know about this yet, every time a magenta baseball goes out of the park, they're going to have something wild and crazy go on here in the stadium. Nobody knows what it is yet. But every time that happens, there's going to be some sort of giveaway, some sort of spectacle happening. So let's hope for a lot of those magenta baseballs to go out of the park and see what happens here. As far as the All-Star game tomorrow, you know what? As far as the All-Star game tomorrow, what happened, I think they really did get things right this year. You have 23 first-year guys in here playing, first-timers in this game today, and that just shows that fans are getting smarter, and they're looking at statistics, and they're seeing what players are playing well. It's not just on a name or popularity. You don't have someone like there's guys that didn't make it like McCutchen, Andrew McCutchen, a name that's a household name, would maybe get in there in other years, but fans are getting a lot smarter, and that's a credit to social media, Twitter, Facebook, all those different sort of social media sites where a lot more information is getting out there and people are getting smarter about baseball, which I think is good in the long run. You get to see these guys really perform, and the ones that are performing, that's what you want to see. You don't want to just see a name go up there. Well, we know that here and he's one of the greatest of all time. Let's put him in there. No, that didn't happen, did it? You have guys like Albert Pujols that isn't there, which I do think that Pujols should have been maybe an honorary captain and maybe Ichiro because of their accomplishments this year with Pujols hitting number 600. But for the most part, the fans did get it right this year.
Hey, Jeff, we thank you very much. Great stuff from down in Miami leading up to the Derby and the All-Star game tomorrow night, and we'll be back. Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, coming to you from Hoover, Alabama, Birmingham, Hoover, kind of like Columbia to Irmo, here for SEC Media Days. So we've had 3 coaches come through today to get us off and running. Tomorrow's a very busy day. We've got 4 teams coming in tomorrow, 4 teams on Wednesday. Now you wrap it up with 3 on Thursday. So tomorrow, I got Georgia. This should be a pretty good this is a good group from Georgia. They're bringing Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and Roquan Smith. That's quality. So you get Georgia tomorrow. You get Vanderbilt tomorrow. Derek Mason coming in. He's bringing in his quarterback, Shermer. Ralph Webb is coming in. That's a good one. Mississippi State with Dan Mullen is bringing in Donald Gray and Des Harris and Martinez Rankin. And then Florida, Jim McElwain, Duke Dawson is coming, Marcel Harris, and Martez Ivy. So Florida, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Georgia on the agenda tomorrow. Wednesday, it's Alabama, Missouri, Kentucky, and Texas A&M. And then Thursday, it's USC, Ole Miss, and Auburn to wrap things up. Will Muschamp is scheduled to be in the main room on Thursday at 10:05 Eastern Time. Jake Bentley, Hayden Hurst, and Debo Samuel joining him for the Gamecocks. So there you go with the agenda the rest of the way. And also on Thursday, Jared will be in Charlotte to cover the ACC happenings. In Clemson, it'll be the Atlantic Division folks going on Thursday, and the Coastal Division folks going on Friday. So on Thursday, you'll have South Carolina stuff from here and Clemson stuff from there. And as things continue to roll towards the start of practice here, coming up in just a couple of more weeks. I also want to remind you something that's coming up in a couple of weeks, an annual event here in South Carolina on July 26th. It's the 8th annual. Can't believe this is the 8th annual event. South Carolina Coaches for Charity, back at the Hyatt Regency in Greenville. It's almost sold out. So if you want to be there, you need to move quickly. SouthCarolinaCoaches.com. SouthCarolinaCoaches.com is the website. And the 2017 Jerry Richardson Community MVPs who will be recognized during the evening. Each coach in attendance gets to recognize somebody along those lines. And Coach Mike Ayers of Wofford will recognize Ed Weil. Coach Clay Hendricks from Furman will recognize John and Jeanette Cothran. Will Muschamp from USC will recognize Travell Wharton. Buddy Pugh at South Carolina State will recognize Joe Thomas Sr. Dabo Sweeney will recognize Hunter Renfro, who will be escorted, by the way, by members of the Alabama secondary who have not been able to stop him the last 2 times. And Brent Thompson from the Citadel will recognize Dr. Kenny Caldwell. So that's coming up on July 26th. It's always a big time, good time. It's also the day before USC begins practice. So I imagine Muschamp will be up there and will stay as long as he can, but he's got I don't know what time USC starts practice on the 27th. Don't know if they're going early morning or what, but he's certainly going to have that on his mind the day before they kick off practice at South Carolina. We'll have Coach Fisher DeBerry on with us here soon to talk more about it and give us a nice lead up to the event. So, Pro, what did you take from what the coaches we heard from today? Anything really jump out at you from Bielema? I have to catch myself. Bielema or Jones in particular. I know we didn't play any Orgeron comments, but you probably heard some off the website. Anything in particular jump out to you from the coaches?
Not really. Butch Jones, at least from his voice inflection, seems to try to grow into the job where he looks like he's reactive to any negative thing heard by the media and just going with the flow. And maybe that's because he wants his team to relax because everybody's going to ask about the quarterback position. and what they're going to do this year. But I'm not so certain what is the bigger loss, the defensive end that he had last year in Barnett, or is it the quarterback? Because I think, we have to see if Tennessee can have the pass rush they had last year that kept them in football games. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think the interesting thing I heard from you, though, was, of course, one of the things that derailed Tennessee from a possible East championship was that loss to South Carolina. And if I'm not mistaken, it seems every season that Tennessee plays, they try to have the bye week before that Alabama game. But this year, did I hear you right, that the bye week is before the home game against South Carolina, when we will try to extract some revenge from being derailed?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Interesting. And then that next, but it's still for South Carolina. If you're a South Carolina fan, this is the way you look at it. That next week, if I'm not mistaken, they play Alabama. So are they focused on revenge, or are they looking over South Carolina and looking for Alabama? Who knows?
Yeah, because they played Alabama the week before they played South Carolina last year. And of course, Alabama beat them up pretty good. And then they came into Columbia, and the Gamecocks upset them and got a big win for them. And Tennessee's an interesting case study. I mean, here's a guy that if I remember correctly, came in with a reputation for a great offensive mind, and he came from Central Michigan, did a lot of good things there, and I think that the Vols fans, they were kind of upset from the get-go last year when they had to go to overtime to beat Appalachian State. Remember that?
Oh yeah,
they were complaining big time about that. In Tennessee, they got their national championship back in the 90s, the late 90s with Philip Fulmer. They had all that success with Philip Fulmer, and they just have not experienced that same success at a consistent level since they fired Philip Fulmer, which, he had a 10-win season sandwiched around a couple of poor seasons, but they made the decision to go in a different direction. And since then, of course, they went through Lane Kiffin, who went 7-6. Then they hired Derek Dooley. That didn't work out in 3 seasons. 6-7, 5-7, 5-7, and now Butch Jones comes in. He goes 5-7, 7-6, and a couple of 9-4s. I think, and 5-3 in the league in 2014. I mean, I think the Vols fans were kind of hoping one of those last 2 teams that won 9 games would have been a little something extra special, especially with a quarterback who was so highly regarded and some other really good you look at some of the talent they had on the offensive side the last couple of years. Josh Malone, I mentioned him. They had the Marquez North wide receiver Marquez North, who made the great catch against South Carolina. He was big time. Alvin Kamara. They had the running back who was so good, who up and quit on them last year. Remember him?
Yeah.
Decided to transfer. They had a ton of talent on that offense.
I thought Kamara was the guy, though. He was strike like lightning, and he was stronger than you thought he was, looking at his build. But then again, Joshua Dobbs would throw what I would call in every game some inexplicable interception, which you were thinking, what did he see?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, man. The guy's an aerospace engineering major. Maybe he was seeing some things that other people don't see because he's so smart. He get drafted, by the way? Did anybody pick him?
The Steelers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay, good. All right, that'll do it. Thank you, Pro. Thank you, Jar March. Thank you to everybody hanging in there with us. Thanks to Jeff Miller for joining us from Miami. And we will be back with you tomorrow night, day 2 of SEC Media Days here on Sports Talk. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.